Hello, traveler. You are early today. Let me tell you about a year so bleak, so quietly cruel, that even the sun seemed to lose interest. Now, people today often grumble about difficult years. They speak of recent troubles with dramatic sighs, comparing months to nightmares. But historians, those with ice cores, tree rings, and far too much time alone, tend to agree no year in recorded history was quite as grim as 536. The skies darkened, crops withered, the air grew cold and stayed that way. It was, quite literally, the darkest year to be alive. The year is 536, and you, yes, you are living in the heart of the Byzantine Empire, in a body already too thin, in a room that no longer smells like food or comfort. Now, before you get too cozy, if this little tale brings a smile, feel free to tap a like, as the young folks say. And if you'd fancy hearing more down the line, well, you know where to find me by subscribing. It's always nice knowing who's out there listening in. So go on, pop a comment, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is by your clock. Right then, shift in, mind the splinters, and let's begin our little journey. The morning begins with cold, not just a bite in the air, but a damp, heavy ache that settles into your joints before you've even opened your eyes. The blanket is stiff, patched and repatched, and still not enough. Frost has crept onto the inside of the shutters again, delicate as lace, cruel as truth. No fire remains in the hearth. Starting one would mean burning something. Wood, cloth, maybe pride. Kindling has become precious, nearly mythic. A neighbor once traded a wooden spoon for a single candle. The spoon had more warmth left in it. Outside, gray smothers the streets. The sun hasn't broken through for weeks. Noon looks like dusk. Dusk looks like forgetting. The fig tree beside the weaver's stall stands bare and bitter, its bark split from cold. The fruit never came this year, nor the songbirds, nor the festivals, just silence, thick as the smoke that drifts listlessly above cook fires, barely bright enough to see by. The baker's shutters are still closed. There's no line at her door because no one expects her to open. Her son, the boy with the laugh that cracked like thunder, hasn't been seen since the last cold snap. His sandals are still by the step. No one touches them. Across the square, an old woman named Lydia used to sit by the cistern, blessing passers-by whether they wanted it or not. She hasn't been there for 4 mornings now. Yesterday, someone swept the dust off her stone. Near the old baths, a few traders still pretend to trade. One sells ash cake, a flat disc of barley husk and hope, charred black on one side, raw on the other. It's traded for a torn scrap of wool. The cake crumbles like regret, but it fills the space in your stomach where hunger stopped bothering to shout. A few grains of millet remain in your house, enough for one meal. They might be shared, but they won't be, not today. Even kindness is rationed now. Even mercy waits its turn. At the edge of the forum, a priest speaks of punishment. He claims sin has veiled the sun. Perhaps it has. Perhaps someone offended a deity with a poorly timed goat offering. More likely, the world is simply broken and the gods, if they're listening, are as cold as the rest of us. A merchant leans in with a joke about his ex-wife being the true cause of the eclipse. No one laughs, but a few smile weakly. Humor, like everything else, is thinner now. Over time, rumors have begun to settle, like the ash itself. Some say there was a volcano in the north, massive enough to choke the heavens. Others whisper of a star that cracked and bled dust into the sky. There are stories of snow in summer and of places, China, Ireland, the far north, where even the trees gave up growing. Centuries from now, scientists will trace these tales through rings of ice and lines of scripture. They'll debate volcanoes and comets and cosmic dust. They'll publish papers with titles like Anomalous Climatic Collapse in the 6th Century, a Multi-Proxy Perspective. What matters is that the baker no longer sings, that the fig tree hasn't bloomed, that your belt now hangs loose even after all the notches have been moved, that you can't remember the last time your hands didn't tremble from cold. That night, the stub of a candle is lit like a relic. The flame dances against the soot on the walls, bright as anything you've seen in days. You watch it melt slowly, letting the wax soak into your fingertips. For a moment, it almost feels like warmth. A quiet thought settles as you blow it out. If the sun does not return, what will? Outside, the sky is quiet, and still the listening continues, just in case it remembers how to shine. Sleep clings to the corners of your mind like dust, fine, restless, and impossible to brush off. It comes in fragments now. A few minutes here, a hollow hour there. Dreams arrive without images, just wait, just silence. Waking up offers no improvement. Limbs ache in strange, quiet places. Muscles that once lifted baskets now tremble carrying a pot of water. The chill has become a permanent roommate, one who doesn't speak, just shifts furniture inside your bones. The bread line stretches past the cistern today. Thinner people, thicker silence. Faces pale and narrow, knotted with worry. No one speaks unless spoken to. Even then, the words are brief currency more than conversation. Some familiar faces are missing. The butcher's boy who once juggled apples when no one was buying hasn't been seen in 2 days. His father now stands behind the stall alone, slicing imaginary meat into empty air with a blade he sharpens out of habit. Near the baths, steam curls up from a cracked tile vent, and 2 women hover over it like birds protecting a single ember. Their hands don't touch, neither the fire nor each other. Even gestures feel rationed now. At home there's barley, a few handfuls tucked into cloth, knotted with care. Sharing is an option, it's always an option, but not one chosen today. The boy who sits near the bakery stoop didn't lift his head when you passed him this morning. Maybe he was asleep, maybe not. That thought stays with you longer than it should, long enough to season the barley with guilt. You boil it slowly. It tastes like warmth remembered and scraped from the bottom of a burnt pot. Better than nothing, which is the reigning champion of local cuisine. Out in the square, a man offers a stew made from boiled roots, moss, and something he calls bitter leaf. It smells like wet sandals. You ask him how he gets the moss. He says flatly, "I used to be a notary." The man next to him nods solemnly. "I was a tailor," he says, holding a ladle. Historians would later marvel at this period, not just for the widespread cold, but for the sheer persistence, the ways people found to keep doing things that no longer made sense. Selling food made of things that aren't food, writing laws no one has the strength to enforce, arguing over taxes in a city where even the rats have started leaving. One priest swears he saw ice on the Nile. A trader claims snow fell on the dome of the rock. A sailor mutters something about red frost in Gaul. Whether these stories are true or not has become irrelevant. They're treated like warmth, passed hand to hand, believed because they might be possible. At dusk, the clouds break for half a moment. Not light exactly, just a thinning of the gray. The city doesn't cheer, but people pause, heads tilt. A silence falls even heavier, the kind that holds breath rather than releases it. Back in the corner of your room, the candle stub leans sideways in its dish. The wax is nearly gone. Lighting it feels ceremonial now. You save it for colder nights, or maybe darker ones. Though it's hard to imagine how much darker things can get. An old friend stops by. Marcus, the one who once mocked omens and read bawdy verses from scrolls now too brittle to touch. He carries a charm in his pocket, something carved from goat bone. Says he bought it from a man who dreamed of fire and was never cold again. You don't ask how much he paid. The cost of comfort is private these days. At the fountain, someone has left a loaf of bread, still warm, no name, no note. People gather slowly, reverently. No one touches it for several minutes. Eventually, a child takes half. The rest disappears shortly after. You linger nearby long enough to see a pigeon land where the loaf had been. The bird looks around, clearly confused. Perhaps it expected better from Constantinople. Later that night, the wind howls, roof slats creak, a pot clatters somewhere in the alley. You stay under the blanket, unmoving. There's nothing to see outside and nothing inside that hasn't already been counted. In sleep, a fever dream, something about blue skies, a street full of oranges, someone laughing, no one you recognize. When you wake, the laughter is still ringing faintly in your ears. That might be the worst part. Memory turning on you, offering up joy you didn't ask for. Still, the days pass. Not in triumph, just in motion. Because what else is there to do? Frost settles on the city again, fine, bright, and mocking. A shimmer without warmth. In the early morning light, it clings to rooftops like powdered sugar on a cake no one can afford to bake. By now, hunger has changed you. Not just physically, though the ribs say enough on their own, but something quieter, deeper. Joy once arrived in big waves, festivals, roasted lamb, market songs. Now it comes in crumbs, like finding a hidden fig seed in old bread or realizing the water didn't freeze overnight. The temple bells ring more often, not for celebration, for funerals, and not grand ones either. A simple chant, a quiet shuffle of sandals, and then silence again. One priest jokes too loudly that he's become more grave digger than sermon giver. He chuckles once, then doesn't again. Someone has etched a sun onto a wall near the apothecary. Not well, just a crude circle with rays. Still, people glance at it as they pass, as if they could will the real thing back with enough attention. It's become a small ritual. Nod to the fake sun, whisper a wish, move on. Even if you don't believe, it's rude not to say hello. Traders still arrive from the east, wrapped in thicker cloaks and thicker stories. One speaks of rice failing in India, of fields dry and cursed. Another brings silk too fine for this crowd, but his words are more valuable. The emperor in China, he says, has seen snow in August. He says this like a man who's seen dragons and is trying to be casual about it. You half wonder if he has a snowball in his bag, just to prove it. Back home, the mildew spreads. It creeps up the corners of walls like ivy grown bitter. At first, it was cleaned away daily. Now it's just part of the room, like the cracked tile or the sigh that escapes each time you sit. You catch yourself talking to it sometimes. "Still here?" you whisper. It never answers, which is probably polite. A letter arrives from the countryside, crumpled, wet, barely legible. It speaks of animals dying without explanation, of children losing their teeth too soon, of wells that now taste of metal. The ink runs halfway through. It ends mid-sentence, like most things do these days. You hold it too long, trying to decide if the missing half was worse or better. At the edge of the market, someone has posted prices for firewood. 1 coin for an arm-length stick, 2 if it's dry, 3 if it doesn't smell like goat. The only people buying are those who look like they shouldn't still be walking. You barter instead, an old comb and half a jar of salt for 2 branches and a promise you can't afford to make. A neighbor tries to melt snow for tea, but the kettle cracks from the cold. She shrugs, uses the pot anyway, and says the iron just needed to let out its feelings. You laugh more than you should. It echoes too much. The joke hangs in the room like steam that refuses to vanish. Midweek, a monk from the west arrives, hair matted, eyes wide. He speaks of a fire in the sky, says a mountain in the north burst into the heavens and blotted out the sun. He talks of famine in Britannia, of Irish monks seeing omens in the ash. One woman asks if the end is near. He shrugs. Could be, he says, but it's not my week to guess. You make a mental note. Never trust a monk with that haircut and no eyebrows. Historians in the future will debate this mountain. Iceland? North America? They'll point at ash trapped in glaciers and match it with tree rings so narrow they look like scars. Some will argue it was one eruption, others 2 or 3, all close together, all loud enough to silence the world for years. But to you it might as well have been a god dropping a curtain and refusing to raise it. Here no one debates, they just listen, then return to their work, or whatever has replaced work now. A boy on the corner sells sun jars, glass pots with polished shells inside. He swears they absorb whatever daylight remains. It's nonsense, of course, but 2 people buy them, not because they believe, because hope has never cared much for logic. You almost buy one yourself, but remember you traded your last good spoon for wax. That evening, the wind brings smoke. Not wood smoke, but something older, earthy, volcanic, foreign. You follow it to the harbor, where a sailor's ship lies half buried in ash. His crew coughs more than they speak. One claims to have seen red rain near the Pillars of Hercules. Another mumbles something about birds falling from clean skies. You don't ask too many questions. Not because you doubt them, but because you're afraid you won't sleep if you believe too much. Later that night, you sit in silence beside your flickering stub of wax. The flame leans toward the window as if reaching. You wonder absurdly if it misses the sun too. You breathe warmth toward it, like feeding a kitten. It thanks you by surviving another minute. The body has begun to change. Nails brittle, hair dull, cuts heal slower, hunger carves quietly. Sometimes you mistake a reflection for someone else. Then remember, no, that's still you, just thinner, more blurred. And something else has started. Fear of the cough. It's going around. The kind that rattles in the chest, dry and steady like a drum too tight. 3 homes on your street have shut their doors with fabric nailed to the frames. One priest calls it a punishment within the punishment. Another just calls it the breath thief. You avoid speaking too much now, just in case. Words are expensive when breath is taxed, but one day you break your own rule. It happens when you see the baker's sandals are gone. Just the dust outline remains. You say her name, soft, instinctively. And for the first time in days, the sound of your own voice surprises you. The sandals are gone and the stone is swept clean. No candle, no offering. Just space, quiet and hollow as an abandoned cradle. A few neighbors notice too. Eyes linger, but no one speaks. Everyone knows what's happened or can guess, but without a body, without a word, it stays unofficial. Like the sun, missing but not declared dead, the city grows quieter by the day. Not in the way of peace, in the way of empty shelves, vanished footsteps, and closed shutters that no longer reopen. The sound of life has been replaced by a softer soundtrack. Water dripping from cracked spouts, clay cups clinking without celebration, and the slow shuffle of someone too weak to hurry. You catch sight of yourself in a polished plate, thin, pale, unfamiliar. The eyes look older, the jaw sharper. Hunger doesn't just take weight, it takes softness, kindness. It smooths everything down until only need remains. Rats have disappeared from your street. For a moment, that sounds like good news. Then it isn't. One neighbor jokes that even the vermin have moved to better neighborhoods. Another swears he saw a dog try to eat a belt. It was unclear who won. Famine does strange things to people. At first, folks share. Then they whisper. Then they close their doors. The streets become narrower, even though nothing has changed but trust. A boy follows you today, no older than 10, barefoot, eyes too big for his face. He doesn't speak, just walks behind for a few blocks, then turns and vanishes like smoke. You don't know what he wanted, you're not sure you'd have given it anyway. At the forum, a monk reads aloud from old texts. He's trying to cheer people, you think. He chooses lines about courage and faith, but his voice is cracked and the parchment shakes in his hands. Someone asks if this is the apocalypse. He replies, "If it is, it's a very patient one." You resist the urge to ask if it charges rent. On the temple wall, someone has carved a sun again, bigger this time, with a face in it, smiling weakly. It looks like a child's drawing. Still, no one dares rub it away. Even bad art holds power now. A rumor spreads that barley has returned to the high fields near Antioch. Another says that the Nile runs clear again. A third insists there are islands where birds still sing in the morning. It's hard to say whether people believe them, but belief is beside the point. Hope has always been more performance than conviction. It bows before reason, but never kneels. Byzantium's nobles hold fast in their villas. You pass one on your way home, a grand structure behind high walls. The guards look thinner but still armed. The brazier smoke smells of citrus wood. Some inside still have fruit. You can smell it. Orange, maybe, or memory. You imagine biting into it and losing a tooth, but what a way to go. The apothecary has closed. The woman who ran it left a sign that reads, "Gone to find sun. Back soon." Hopefully. It's the most optimistic thing you've seen in weeks. You almost steal the sign, just to remind yourself someone still hoped with ink and intention. You try not to go to the church every day, but today you do. The candles there are more numerous. People still donate wax, even when they have none to spare. It's one of the few rituals that hasn't cracked. You light one. It burns straight, steady, honest. You almost trust it. The flame seems to hold the room together like a pinned seam in a collapsing tent. A man at the docks claims to be from Nubia. He tells stories of a red mist that clings to your clothes and of elephants keeling over mid-step. Another sailor describes Britannia as a kingdom of ghosts. Whether he's being poetic or literal isn't clear. You nod either way. It doesn't matter. The line between ghost and guest has gotten blurry. People today will wonder whether the dust was from Iceland or Central America, whether it was one volcano or three or something worse. But none of that helps you now as you scrape the last dried lentil from a clay bowl and wonder how many days you can stretch nothing. It's the kind of question that doesn't need an answer, just another bowl. You hear coughing again at night. 2 doors down, behind fabric-wrapped shutters. Once you'd have knocked, brought herbs, maybe said a prayer. Now you just lower your head. Guilt feels like a second blanket, heavy but not warm. The wind whistles through gaps in the beams. The roof moans, and you wonder if it will hold through the month, or if the sky might finally get inside. You've caught yourself staring at it, waiting for something to fall. Dust, ash, justice. It's strange what you begin to fear, not dying but disappearing, that you might one day not be noticed as missing, that someone will sweep your step without pausing, that your sandals won't be remembered at all. In the meantime, you make tea from thyme and a pebble. It tastes like honesty, bitter and disappointing, but technically not poisonous. You sip it slowly, pretending it warms you. That game is easier than it should be. Your body is a list of missing things now: fat, ease, softness, song. Even your laughter feels like an artifact, something left behind in a better season. You hum under your breath sometimes, but the notes feel borrowed. One morning, a child drops an egg in the street. It cracks, steam rises. People gather around, eyes wide. No one scolds the child. No one moves for the egg. They just stare as the yolk bubbles against the stone like a vision. Someone whispers, "It's a miracle." Someone else says, "It's just an egg." Both might be right. That night, you dream of warm bread. Not the real kind, but the bread your mother once described when you were small crusted gold, steam rising, soft center. You wake before biting into it. The stomach tightens, disappointed but not surprised. You roll over, pull the blanket higher, and whisper your own name to make sure you still remember it. Outside, the stars flicker behind ash. They're trying, just like the rest of us. The breadline stretches like a rope that's fraying at both ends. You join it anyway, hands tucked into sleeves, face low. The baker doesn't speak much anymore, just holds up fingers when there's food and shrugs when there isn't. Today, it's a shrug. Again, back home, you try to pretend there's something left in the pantry. Open and close jars, as if the air inside might coalesce into soup, if you will, it hard enough. Even the spice jar is empty now, though the lid still gives you a hopeful little squeak. There's a moment brief silly when you sniff the jar anyway. Cloves once lived there. The memory of warm winter drink wraps around you like a ghost blanket. You close the jar with more care than it deserves. Outside, someone has painted a fish on the side of a broken cart. It's been colored in with soot and dried plum juice. Ridiculous, really, but you find yourself staring at it as if it might swim away and carry the artist with it. A few streets over, a man preaches from a barrel, claims the world is ending, and only by fasting and prayer can we lift the veil. You resist shouting that the world already has ended and you're already fasting, thank you very much. But arguing with prophets is like arguing with a mule, exhausting, loud, and you'll still end up walking. People around you start to change. Not physically, though they've thinned, paled, weathered, but in how they move, how they look at each other. Conversations are shorter, gestures tighter. Kindness is measured out in crumbs. One girl offers a fig to her sister, only to take it back and tear it in half first. You visit the shrine of St. Pelagia, not because you're especially devout, but because it's warmer there. People sleep sitting upright, knees tucked, cloaks pulled over heads. No one talks. It's a room of breathing statues. In the corner, someone sings a lullaby with no child in their lap. One morning, you wake up and the street is lined with crows. They perch on rooftops, chimneys, even laundry lines. Dozens of them, perfectly still. You freeze. No one else seems to notice. You wonder if they're real. You wonder if you are. The crows are gone by nightfall. But they leave something behind, a coldness deeper than the air. Like something watched you and decided not to interfere. At the harbor, ships no longer come in full. Sailors stagger off like survivors of some private war. They speak of famine in Gaul, of harvests devoured by black skies. One murmurs that people there boil tree bark for broth. Another whispers that in Noricum, a merchant traded his boots for soup. Boots, he says, with his feet still in them. The man next to you crosses himself. You just nod. It's all too familiar now. Horror no longer startles. It just confirms. In the bathhouse, the fires burn low. Once a place of warmth and gossip, it's grown quiet. Steam no longer masks the chill. A boy sits shivering near the coals. Someone's drawn a sun on his back in ash. A joke? A prayer? No one knows. You leave before you start shaking too. Later, at market, you hear laughter. Real laughter. You stop, stunned. It comes from a group of children gathered around a man with a flute. It's cracked, off-key, but he plays it like a concert. The children clap, dance, forget. For one moment, so do you, until a woman yanks her child back by the arm. No dancing, she snaps. That's how it started in Strasbourg. You don't know what that means, but it leaves a stain on the air. One of your friends, what remains of that word, tells you about her brother. Gone north, she says it's brighter there. You ask if she's heard from him. She shakes her head, says only, if I were light, I wouldn't come back either. You walk more than usual now. not for errands, but to prove to yourself that you can, that the joints still work, that the city still stands. There's comfort in motion, even if it leads nowhere. Along the way, you collect oddities, a cracked cup, a prayer etched into bark, a feather tied with string. Your pockets grow heavy with things no one wants but you. Memory weighs less than bread, but fills more space. At one corner, a boy sells drawings. Charcoal on scraps, he draws faces. Not portraits, just faces. All of them smiling. Too many teeth, none of them real. You buy one anyway, not because you want it, but because someone should. You pin it above your sleeping mat. That night, you dream of smiling too, though you wake with your jaw clenched. Priests now speak of penance, of purging, of darkness as a test. You nod as they speak, the way one does when waiting for the breadline. Eyes glazed, body present, soul delayed. One of them says, "This will pass." Another replies, "So will we." It gets a chuckle, not a warm one, but it counts. Campfire talk returns, travelers and their slippery truths. One woman from the Persian border says the stars fell one night and didn't rise again for 3 days. A merchant insists he met a man in Ceylon who has never seen the sun in his lifetime. A child nearby gasps, then laughs, unsure if it's allowed. You believe some of it, maybe most. Reality is flexible now. What matters is whether it keeps you moving. At home, you light the last stub of wax. It trembles in the cold. You watch it closely, like a child watches a window in a storm, hoping the glass holds. Sleep doesn't come quickly. You lie there replaying old sounds, market chatter, bird calls, sandals on marble. They come like echoes through a cracked wall. And then, for no reason you can name, a memory returns. Your mother peeling fruit, the smell of honey and salt, her voice saying, "Even the worst seasons end." You whisper it to yourself, "Even the worst seasons end. Even the worst," and then the wax dies out. Morning is no longer marked by sunlight. It's marked by sound, or lack of it. Today begins with silence, the kind that presses against the ears. Even the dogs have stopped barking. Your joints creak as you stand. A familiar symphony now, like worn hinges on a door that no longer opens fully. The blanket slips off your shoulders, stiff from frost. It holds its shape for a second before folding inward, as if giving up too. The street outside is glazed with ice. You step carefully, as though the ground might betray you. It often does these days, cracks underfoot, stones loosening like they too wish to flee. Someone's left a pot out. There's snow inside, frozen solid, with a single hair, thin crack across the surface. You stare at it longer than you should. It reminds you of your own reflection lately, fragile, fissured, trying to hold something beneath the surface. Down at the southern gate, a caravan arrives. But they bring no spices, no dyes, just news. And what news it is! A man from Egypt says the Nile failed to flood again. 2 years, he says, holding up tired fingers. 2 years dry. His companion nods solemnly. The priests have no more gods to blame. They've gone quiet. From the west, a Gaulish traveler mutters of bodies in the fields left too long, avoided even by birds. He says a monk tried to bury them all but collapsed after the 12th. Buried his own shovel, someone quips. You almost smile. And from far-off China, a letter thin as onion skin, with brushstrokes faded, tells of snow in summer, failing crops and yellow dust that falls from the sky and whispers like silk. That last part sounds poetic, or like a bad omen trying to dress up. You've stopped calling it fog or ash. Now it's just the sky's sulk, a long, stubborn pout that won't lift. Inside the basilica, people gather, not for worship, for warmth. The place smells of wax, wool, and damp shoes. A man reads aloud from a scroll about portents and stars. He sounds tired of his own voice. Behind him, a boy doodles a sun in the dirt with a stick. It's the fifth you've seen this week. Some are smiling, others are frowning. One had teeth. You see the plague again today, not directly, but close. A woman across the alley hasn't opened her shutters in 3 days. The cloth tied to her door has changed color, darker now, like rot spreading across linen. You say nothing, as is custom. Just lower your head and walk faster. The sickness is clever. It doesn't come roaring, it trickles. A cough here, a slow breath there. Someone sits when they should stand, lies down when they should sit. And then the silence. The body learns to recognize it. Your skin crawls when it's near, not from fear but from grim familiarity, like hearing the clink of a cup you know will be empty. One evening, a merchant offers a deal, a single apple, still red, still whole. The cost? A good memory, he says. You ask what he means. He doesn't answer, just smiles like someone who hasn't for too long. You decline, but only because you're not sure which memory to sell. That night you dream of warmth, but it isn't fire, it's being held, not romantically, just that quiet, solid grip of someone saying, I know. The air tastes like smoke and old bread. There's word of unrest in the capital. Riots even, people trying to storm the grain houses. One boy says his uncle joined, another says his uncle guarded it. You don't ask who won. You've stopped believing anyone wins lately. The baths have closed, the public ones at least. There's a sign outside, water sick, fire tired, come back later. You wonder if someone meant it as a joke, but the tiles beneath are stained with something dark. Maybe it laughed first. A traveling priest comes through town, barefoot and bold-eyed. He claims this is the cleansing, the great turning of the wheel. We are the rust being scraped away, he cries. His feet bleed as he walks. A child offers him sandals. He refuses. Suffering is sacred, he says. You wonder if holiness always comes with blisters. A woman you once worked with approaches you in the market. She smiles, offers a root, gnarled, half-frozen, but food. We found a patch near the wall, she says. You thank her. She says nothing else. Later, you try to remember her name and fail. It doesn't feel cruel, just normal now. At the Eastern Temple, someone sings, not a hymn, not a chant, a song from childhood, simple and lilting. People gather not to join in, just to be near it. One man wipes his eye, claims it's from the smoke. There is no fire. By week's end, a cold fog rolls in thicker than ash, heavier than snow. People vanish inside it. You walk carefully, measure steps. Whisper names under your breath like a prayer bead list. Yours is always last, just in case you forget it by morning. One night, your cough returns. It rattles like bones in a jar. You hide it with a sleeve. No one looks at you, but you know they hear. You sleep farther from the others now, just in case. The days blur. Hunger and time rub against each other until they smooth into sameness. You mark days by what doesn't happen. No sun, no bread, no footsteps from next door, and yet somehow you endure. You find an old sandal today in the gutter. Not yours, not anyone's anymore. But it's whole, and you laugh softly at that, not because it's funny, but because it's absurd that anything remains whole. You take it home, place it beside your mat, call it your guest, offer it a crumb, tell it stories. It doesn't reply, but neither does it leave. And in this city of ash and absence, that's the highest form of love. You've started naming things. The cracked water jug is Helena. The patch of wall where sun once landed, if only faintly, is now Thea. The candle stub you ration like a miser's inheritance goes by Crispin. It helps. or at least it makes madness feel more organized. There's a rhythm to deprivation now. Hunger arrives in waves like a poorly trained soldier, clumsy, loud, and always on time. You greet it without ceremony. Sometimes you imagine it tipping its hat. One morning you wake to find the air thicker than usual, not cold, not smoky, just dense. It presses down like wet wool, your ears ring faintly, and your skin prickles with the sense that something is off. You step outside, and there it is, red snow. It falls lightly, lazily, dust-colored, then rust-colored. People emerge from their homes like mice from corners. No one speaks at first, then someone whispers, "It's the blood of the saints." Another says, "It's demons shedding their skin." A third, ever the practical one, mutters, "It's probably just dirt." All three are correct in a way. Later, a traveling scholar explains that such things have happened before, that sometimes minerals in the sky stain the snow, that it isn't blood or magic, just the sky misbehaving. You nod along, grateful for an answer. But you still sweep it away from your doorstep like it might bite. The dreams worsen, not nightmares, just memories, slightly wrong. Your father's face with unfamiliar eyes, a meal that tastes of ink, voices calling you by the wrong name. You wake each time with your heart in your throat and your hands clutched around nothing. The mat beneath you feels like it's receding, like even the ground is giving up. At the well, a woman faints. She's carried home by strangers, though one checks her pockets first, not cruelly, just instinct. The water tastes of iron now, not enough to sicken, just enough to remind you that something's changed again. A boy sells sun charms in the plaza, small discs of brass etched with clumsy rays. He says they bring warmth. You buy one, not for belief, but because hope needs hobbies. You hang it above your door. The next morning it falls and cracks a bowl. So much for that investment. The healer down the road begins charging for advice. Not money, of course, no one has any. But he asks for stories. Something true, he says, or something you wish was. You trade him a tale about a rooster that crowed so loudly it scared away thunder. He gives you 2 wilted leaves and a shrug. Fair deal. At the monastery, bells ring for no reason. No service, no death, no event. Just the echo of brass in fog. A monk explains later someone forgot to tie the clapper. But by then, rumors have spread. People whisper that angels are trying to speak and can't find the words. You don't laugh, not because you believe it, just because you miss the sound of laughter not followed by coughing. There's news of an eclipse. You can't see it. The sky is still stubbornly gray. But people react anyway. A crowd gathers at the main square and stares upward, daring the clouds to reveal their secrets. One man cries. Another just takes off his sandals and walks home barefoot. No explanation given. You start talking to yourself. Quietly at first, then more conversationally. Your voice grows hoarse from disuse, and the sound of it surprises you. It echoes oddly in your room. You make a joke and chuckle, then feel embarrassed, but there's no one to judge. And anyway, you're the funniest person you know at this point. Food continues to vanish. Barley, lentils, dried figs, once scarce, now myth. You chew on bark once just to see. It tastes like a bad idea. You find a note nailed to a door, scrawled in charcoal, "Gone to find the sun. If you see her, tell her I'm tired." You copy it into your wall with a dull stylus. The words feel right. Campfire stories return, smoke curling with lies and truths alike. A man claims he saw a city of glass beneath the sea, where light still shines and fish hum lullabies. Another says a village to the north dances every night to ward off death. They haven't stopped in weeks, he says. They don't dare. Someone tells a story about an old emperor who once cursed the sky in anger and was turned into a statue for his insolence. You glance toward the forums. No statues seem new, but they all look guilty. You try praying again, not because you think it will work, but because silence is a heavy companion. You recite old lines, some half-remembered, others invented. You ask for small things, a warm breeze, a full belly, a dream that ends kindly. None arrive, but the asking feels medicinal. You remember music, not just the sound, but the shape of it, the way it lifts the chest, even if just for a moment. You hum again, slow, hesitant. A child hears and joins in. The melody is nothing, but the harmony is everything. Small but intentional. People gather not for heat, but for presence. One woman tells riddles, another shares a recipe for a stew. No one can make any more. They laugh, not out of joy, but muscle memory. You smile too, not wide, not long, but honestly. Later that night, the wind changes, warmer, just slightly, enough to make you lift your face. You breathe in, it smells of soil, damp, dark, forgiving. You whisper to your blanket, maybe tomorrow. The blanket does not answer, but it doesn't fall off either. And in the cold, cruel silence of this long year, that's almost a conversation. The wind has changed again, not gentler, just stranger. It smells faintly of salt, though you're days from the coast. Someone claims it's the sea weeping for us. Someone else says it's just the fish rotting upriver. Either way, the stench carries well. You pull your cloak tighter. It's fraying at the hem now, and the clasp is gone, replaced with a knotted string. You name the knot Gaius. It holds better than most politicians you've met, and with fewer lies. The baker's stall is finally empty, not just of food, but of people. A child has scratched the word hungry into the wood with what looks like a chicken bone. You find yourself wondering if the bone came before or after the carving. More people are leaving the city now. Whole families pushing carts filled with nothing useful. Broken chairs, fireless lanterns, hope in baskets. They call it going east. When pressed, most can't explain why. Just that maybe East hasn't noticed the sky yet. You don't leave. Not yet. Not because you believe it'll get better here, but because you no longer believe in better. At the temple, someone has tied gold thread to the statue of Apollo. It catches no sun, only dust, but still shimmers faintly in the gloom, a silent dare. Someone else joins you. Neither of you speaks. There are rumors of plague again, worse than the last. A merchant claims it rides on fleas now. Tiny devils, he says, plucking one from his arm and flicking it into the fire. You itch the moment he says it, of course. Everyone does. Half the plaza scratches like an impromptu folk dance. A priest tries to hold a service. His voice cracks midway through, not from emotion but thirst. Someone hands him a cup. He drains it like a man drinking applause. He speaks of renewal, of fire forging purity. You stop listening after the third cleansing. It's the same script, just more soot on the stage. The baths reopen briefly, but the water is green and smells like pickled sorrow. You soak anyway, not for hygiene, but to remember the feeling of warmth touching skin. When you emerge, someone has stolen your sandals. You laugh, not because it's funny, but because your toes look ridiculous. Little pale worms on a marble floor. You walk home barefoot. The streets are oddly quiet. Even the cats have retreated. You see one dart past, thin, limping, wild-eyed. You exchange nods like fellow survivors of an unnamed battle. In the market square, someone has painted a mural, black paint on stone. It shows a sun crossed out with an X, and beneath it, people dancing, not with joy, not even in madness, just moving, as if they'd forgotten how to stop. That night, the fog returns. This time it brings sound with it, not words, just low moans like wind through a broken flute. You wrap yourself tighter in your cloak and hum to drown it out. The melody is nonsense, but it holds shape. You dream of warmth again. This time it's a fire that doesn't burn, only glows. It floats above you, humming like bees. You try to speak to it. It answers in your mother's voice, saying, "It's still not the end." You wake to snow, gray, dry, bitter. It crunches underfoot like old parchment. Children try to eat it, and one breaks a tooth. There's no dentist, but an old woman pulls the tooth with her fingers and tucks it in a pouch. "For trade," she mutters. "You don't ask. The well is frozen now." People hammer at it with rocks, muttering prayers and curses in equal measure. You fetch your water from a broken aqueduct instead. It trickles slowly, like a reluctant confession. Someone drops a jug beside you, and the echo bounces for too long. It reminds you of temple chants, back when those still rang through halls instead of skulls. You pass a man wearing a mask made from bark and string. He says he's protecting himself from sky rot. You ask if it works. He shrugs. "Haven't died yet." It's the most optimistic thing you've heard all week. There's talk of the emperor. Some say he's dead, others say he's hiding. One man claims he's in the sky now, negotiating with whatever's up there. A child asks if he'll send bread when he's done. The room goes quiet, then erupts in laughter. It's ugly, joyful, short-lived. The days stretch long again, not because the sun has returned, but because sleep comes in smaller portions now. Like meals, it's rationed by necessity. You nap in chairs, against walls, even standing once. You wake surprised, but upright. Someone starts building a tower from debris. Not high, just carefully. They say it's a message. To what? Someone asks. To whatever's listening, they reply. You leave a stone. It's all you can afford. Your cough returns, not loud, just enough to remind your ribs that they're tired too. You find yourself whispering apologies to your lungs like they're old friends you've disappointed. At the end of the alley, someone plays a harp. Poorly. A string breaks. The player curses softly, then tunes the remaining ones. The song limps on. Still, you stay to hear the end. You meet a boy who's never seen the sun. He's 5. Born in the haze. He asks what it looked like. You try to explain. Like a gold coin on fire, you say. He nods solemnly and whispers, "I'd eat that." You smile for hours. A scroll arrives from the coast. Just 4 words. The locusts are back. No one reacts. After the red snow, the sky rot, and the plague, riding fleas, locusts feel almost quaint. Like a reunion no one RSVP'd to. One morning you find a loaf of bread on your doorstep, still warm. No note, no trace. You cry, not because of kindness, but because your hands tremble when you pick it up, like they forgot what softness feels like. You eat slowly, reverently, biting each crumb like it might vanish. Halfway through, you stop, wrap the rest, save it. You don't know why, you just do. That evening, you speak aloud to the darkness. "Still not the end," you say. It doesn't reply. But the fog doesn't press so tightly that night, and sometimes that's all the conversation you need. The bread is gone by morning. You'd meant to save it, really, but sleep was thin and hunger thick, and sometime around the wolf hour, you ate the rest with shaking fingers. You don't regret it. You also don't remember tasting it, just the act, the motion, the chewing, the swallowing, like lighting a candle for no one. You find yourself walking more these days, not to go anywhere, just to move, to prove that you still can. Your knees protest, your back aches like it's bored of being upright, but your feet keep time like a forgotten drum. At the edge of the city, you see a tree, a real one, not skeletal, not dead. It isn't tall, but it's green. Tiny sprouts push from its bark like hesitant compliments. Someone's tied a ribbon around its trunk. You stop and touch it, half expecting it to vanish like a mirage. It doesn't. You don't cry, but your throat forgets how to swallow for a minute. The fog lifts a little that afternoon. Not fully, just enough to remember what shadows look like. People emerge slowly, blinking like owls. One child throws a pebble and shouts, "It made a shadow!" Adults laugh. Not bitterly, not madly, just surprised. You join them, your ribs hurt from it. Someone organizes a feast. Of what, you ask? Of what we have, they reply. Turns out that's half a goat, 3 carrots, and something unidentifiable that smells like regret. It's still the best meal in months. You bring dried herbs from under your floorboards. You don't remember storing them, but you must have. You sprinkle them over the stew. The steam smells faintly of your grandmother's kitchen. A man next to you whispers, "I think I remember hope tasting like this." There's music again, bad but enthusiastic. Someone has hollowed a gourd and strung it with gut. It sounds like a wounded cat, but no one minds. People dance, awkward and stiff. A boy stumbles, then laughs so loudly he startles himself. You clap. You even stomp once. Your foot reminds you why you stopped doing that. Later, by the embers, someone tells a joke about the sun applying for unpaid leave. It doesn't quite land, but no one minds. Humor is rusty like everything else. You offer one of your own about fleas hosting a banquet. It gets a wheeze, high praise these days. You pass by the forum the next morning. Someone's drawn new faces on the statues, smiling, frowning, weeping. Childish, crude, absurd. Also, perfect. A priest you haven't seen in months returns looking thinner but brighter. "We're still here," he says, "and that must mean something, You nod. It does. Even if you don't know what, there's word of planting. Someone's found seeds, hidden in a clay jar behind a collapsed wall. Lentils, barley, maybe flax. No one knows if they'll grow. No one cares. The act of planting becomes the ritual, like spelling hope into soil. You kneel to help. The earth feels cold but willing. You press a seed in and whisper something over it, maybe a prayer, maybe an apology. The sky remains the same, sulking, dim, but it no longer feels angry, just exhausted. You understand that your cough still lingers. It rattles sometimes when you wake, but you've stopped flinching at the sound. It's yours. Familiar. Like a squeaky floorboard or an old neighbor. The boy who's never seen the sun asks if it makes noise. You pause, then say, "Yes." It laughs at everything. He grins wide enough to carry the sky. You pass a girl drawing lines on the wall of her home. For each day, she says, you count them. There are nearly 500. You do the math. She nods. "We passed it," she says. "Past what?" "The worst." You stare at the lines again. They look like claw marks, like poetry, like teeth. You nod back. Maybe you have. A scroll arrives. This time, not warning of more doom, but offering instruction. How to test soil. How to dry roots. How to tell good grain from spoiled by taste, smell, or color. Practical, dull, precious. You copy some lines onto your wall. Bad handwriting, but honest. Someone sets up a new stall. Not selling, just sharing. Take what you need, leave what you don't. You leave an old button. Later you find someone's left a carved comb in its place. You keep it even though you've no hair worth combing. It feels like wealth. A dog follows you home, scrawny, twitchy, suspicious. You name him Silence. He stays 2 days, then leaves. You miss him like a brother. On a walk, you find a broken tablet in the mud. The inscription is cracked, but one line is clear. This too is part of time. You carry it home and place it by your bed. You read it every night before sleep. It feels like a spell, a shrug, a truth. You dream again. This time, it's fields. Green, real, loud with insects. You don't move in the dream, just breathe it in. When you wake, The fog is thick again, but the smell of soil still lingers in your nose. You eat less, not by choice, just by rhythm. But hunger no longer bites the same way. It hums now, an old tune, familiar, bearable. You've outlived sharper things. You think of writing. Not a letter, not a prayer, just a record. We were here, that's all. No one might read it, but the wall deserves to remember. You carve it small, at ankle height. Someone asks why. In case the next ones are shorter, you joke. They laugh. Genuinely. You smile too. It's not over, not really. The sun hasn't returned. The fields are bare. The sickness still skulks like a bored guest, but something has shifted. You survived, not untouched, not unscarred, not whole, but still. And in the year of no sun, no warmth, no mercy, that's more than many could say. You dream again, but this time it's not the sun, it's a candle, one you'd forgotten. The stub named Crispin. In the dream, it doesn't flicker or fade, it just stays lit. You wake feeling, not rested, but settled, as if something inside you finally sat down. The sky is still gray, the fog still clings, but the cold seems to hesitate at your doorstep now, like an uninvited guest, unsure if it's overstayed. You greeted anyway. Come in then, we've shared worse. More scrolls arrive from the south this time with news, not warnings. Crops growing in Nubia, a river thawing in Gaul, merchants moving again. You read the words slowly, twice, then tucked the scroll into your cloak-like treasure. You walked to the edge of the city. The tree from before? It's grown, just a little. One new branch with leaves like the underside of coins. You place your hand against it. You whisper, "Still here." The bark feels warmer than you expect. The boy who's never seen the sun asks if it will come back. You pause, then say, "Maybe it already has a little, just hiding in places now." He nods solemnly, and you both stare upward, hoping. Someone hangs a bell from a wall, rusted, lovely. It rings in the wind, off-key and perfect. You stop beneath it and listen. You realize it's the first music you've heard in weeks that didn't sound afraid. You help repair a roof. You plant another seed. You share half a fig with someone you barely know. These aren't miracles, but they feel like rebellion. A new traveler comes through town, draped in wool and optimism. He says he saw a sunset, just a glimpse over the sea. You want to call him a liar. Instead, you ask him to describe it twice. Someone else starts carving again, not names of the dead, but shapes, flowers, stars, hands. You add a crooked spiral. You don't know what it means, but it looks like motion, like going forward. The market fills, if only slightly. Buttons, cloth scraps, sour roots, things no one needs, and so everyone wants. You trade a broken comb for a whistle carved from bone. You don't play it, just hold it occasionally. It feels like planning. The temple is quiet now. The priests say fewer words. But when they do, they're softer. One tells a story about a bird that outlived winter by forgetting to stop singing. You like that. You think you might be that bird. At the well, people still mutter, but now it's about planting times and how best to dry grain. No prophecies, just preparation. You haul water with cracked hands and feel proud of each drop. Silence. The dog returns, just for an hour. Just to nap by your feet. You don't pet him, you just sit beside him. That feels like enough. The red snow never came back. The air still bites, but the sky no longer bruises. You don't know if it's healing or just tired of hurting. Either way, you're grateful. A monk recites a poem, old and worn. We walked through the night, our hands full of nothing, and gave it names. You nod. You've done that. Helena, the jug. Gaius, the knot. Crispin, the candle. You've named survival. Your ribs still ache. Your breath still catches sometimes, but the sickness has passed, or maybe it's moved on. Either way, your steps don't drag as much. You go to the plaza again. People gather, not in fear, not in mourning, but in a sort of tired joy. Someone sings, you recognize the tune. You add your voice to it, off-key but loud. The boy tugs your cloak. Was this the worst year, he asks? You think about it. You think about the ash, the plague, the hunger, the dark, and you say, maybe, but we were in it, and now we're not. He nods, he offers you a sun charm, a new one, better carved. You hang it above your door. It doesn't fall this time. That night, as you lie down, you whisper to no one in particular. You tried, year, you really did. And for the first time in what feels like forever, you laugh. Quiet but real, like it belongs to you. The sky stays gray, the earth stays cold. But you stay. And now, traveler, let your eyes soften. The worst has passed. You've walked through ash, hunger, and cold, and still, somehow, you remain. You've named hope in quiet places, held laughter like a coal in the dark. You've seen how the world ends and how it stubbornly begins again. So now, shift your weight. Let the fog stay outside. Let your breath ease. You are not in 536 anymore, but for a moment you were. And you survived. Close your eyes. The dark is only night now. And the silence, it's just waiting to lull you home. Good night.